Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. In Book 2 of On the Nature of the Gods, Balbus the Stoic, who is arguing in favor of there being a divine providence that runs throughout the entire world and indeed the entire universe, is going to introduce another consideration after discussing beauty. He's going to talk about what we translate as stability and coherence of the universe as a whole. As it's going to turn out, as we'll see, it's not a perfect eternity of the universe as we think of it, but we'll come to that in a moment, the Stoics' view on the universal conflagration. So let's begin at the start of this particular discussion. He says, not only are these things marvelous, right, but nothing is more remarkable, more worthy of note than the stability and coherence of the world. And so he's using the term mundum there, right, which could be understood as like the globe that we're on, although it's actually going to be about the totality of the cosmos. And so stabilis is the adjective there. The world is stable. The world is steady. And then he's going to use a verb, ita coherent. It holds together in this way, right? So all of the things that comprise the world are connected together coherently. And then he's going to say something really interesting here. He says it's impossible to imagine, ex cogitare, to think of, to work out in our mind. So it's not just imagining with a picture, with images, it's thinking about, to conceive of. It's impossible to conceive of anything better adapted, aptius, to endure, to remain, ad permanendum, right? So he's saying that of all the things that do endure in time, this universe is the one that is the greatest in that way. We can't possibly imagine something better than that, something that is going to be aptius, better suited, we could say. So why is this the case? Well, he begins with some examples that are going to lead us to what we could call a principle. He says, all of the parts in every direction gravitate with a uniform pressure towards the center, and bodies conjoined maintain their union most permanently, and we'll come to that in a moment. What is the condition for that? Well, it's going to be that, now there's a little bit of a mistranslation here. It's translated here as, this function is fulfilled by that rational and intelligent substance which pervades the whole world as the efficient cause of all things, and which draws and collects the outermost particles towards the center. It's a little bit of addition there. Some of the word substance is not being actually used there. There's no substantia. A little bit closer translation to Cicero's Latin would be that nature, that natura, that pervades the entire world. The world is the mundum, right? And we're talking about omnium mundum. And it pervading it, funditur, right? So, being involved in it. And it produces conficients. And produces there is probably not the best way to convey the con, together, right? But it produces this effect. So you could say efficient cause. It makes this happen. And it does so by or through mind, mente, and reason, ratio, right? So mind is being translated there as intelligence. Okay, that's not a bad translation, but mind is quite literally what's being said there. So there's something that has mind and reason, and that binds everything together, drawing the extremes, the extrema, to the middle part. So you could think of this in terms of gravity. You could think of this in terms of all the other ways in which things are connected. And so he's going to talk, so this is what we just skipped over a little bit earlier, of there being a bond, a vinculum, literally like a link in a chain, or the chain itself. And the bodies that are connected together maintain this union more permanently when they actually have a bond, a vinculum, that encompasses circum dato, right? That goes all the way around them to bind them together or to collect these bodies together. Colligantur. And so there's, a sense of gathering them, but also of connecting them with each other. So it's not just a mechanistic law of gravity or something like that. There's an actual intelligent force, according to the Stoics, that is doing this. And now we can turn to looking at how this unfolds. So we've already seen in earlier discussions that Balbus is going to bring up these four main areas, each connected to a particular element: earth, water, air, and then ether, which is also fire. So the earth is, the world itself, the earth that binds things together. He says, if the world is round and therefore all its parts are held together by and with each other in universal equilibrium, the same must be the case with the earth itself. So all of its parts must converge towards the center, which in a sphere is the lowest point, without anything to break the continuity and to threaten its vast complex of forces and masses with dissolution. So we've got an earth, right? And it's made of earth. And it's what we live on. And everything else, well, not everything else, most other things live upon. And then we have the sea. And you could say, well, the sea is also on the same level as the earth, is it not? And he says, well, kind of. He says, on the same principle, the sea, though above the earth, because, there's earth below the water, right? It's not as if there's an infinite amount of water. The sea, although above the earth, nevertheless seeks the earth's center and is massed into a sphere, uniform on all sides, and doesn't flood its bound and overflows. And then we've got the air, which is above both of these, wrapped around them. And he says, at its neighbor, the air travels upward in virtue of its lightness, but it spreads horizontally in all directions. And while contiguous and conjoined with the sea, it has a natural tendency to rise to the sky, to the heavens, right? Caelum. And it has, by receiving an admixture of the sea's tenuity and heat, furnishes to living creatures the breath of life and health. So good for us, right? And then he says, and above that, you've got the highest part of the sky. So this is going up to the level of the moon, and we're now talking about the ether, the superlunary realm. And he says the air is enfolded by the highest part of the sky, termed the ethereal part. This retains its own tenuous warmth, uncongealed by any admixture, and unites with the outer surface of the air. So we've essentially got like spheres that are kind of wrapped around each other, And that is the totality of the cosmos. And he says, in the ether, the stars are moving in their courses. They maintain their spherical form by their own internal gravitation and sustain their motions by virtue of their shape and conformation. They're round, and this is the shape that is least capable of receiving injury, but they're made of fiery substance, and they are nourished, as he says, by the vapors of the earth, the sea, and the waters, which are raised up by the sun out of the fields, and when nourished and renewed by these vapors, it sheds them back once again and once more draws them from the same source. So what do we have here? A cycle of movement of elements, and it seems to be completely stable and coherent, except that, according to the Stoics, at least most of them, because Panaetius is going to be mentioned here as somebody who says, I don't believe that. It isn't. So it's interesting because Balbus would say that, there is the loss of no matter or, and this is going to turn out to be the case for the Stoics, of an extremely small part which is consumed by the fire of the stars and the flame of the ether. So the matter that composes the other three domains and elements, earth, water, air, is slowly being consumed by the fire of the stars, the flame of the ether. And this leads us to talking about something that is rather unique to Stoic metaphysics in ancient times. They had this notion of the ekpurosis, the universal burning up of everything, or you could actually say everything turning into fire. Because we usually think of like fire in a mundane sense, it consumes and then it's gone, right? This is more this cosmic fire, and everything is being turned into it. So we have this conflagration of the entire world by fire, which is, as he's going to say, a living being and a god. That's all that's left. And then we have a new creation, a renovatio, right? And the ordered universe is restored as before. And then he goes into a little bit more cosmology, but this is really the main thing that he wants to convey, that there's a stability here, and this should induce us to think, well, there must be some sort of intelligent, intentional orderer that makes things happen this way. And so that's essentially the argument that is being made here for the existence and reality of some sort of providential, intelligent ordering of this vast, coherent, and stable cosmos.